I've always been fascinated by the mysterious phenomenon of speaking in tongues. It's a practice that has captivated people for centuries. From ancient roots to modern interpretations, we'll uncover the story of glossolalia and its impact on various cultures and religions throughout time. I'm excited to take you on this journey of discovery and understanding. Our journey begins with the ancient roots of glossolalia. Speaking in tongues isn't just a Christian phenomenon. It has a history that stretches back even further. In fact, we can find practices similar to glossolalia in various ancient religions and cults. One fascinating example is the Greek oracle at Delphi. These oracles would enter into trance-like states and speak in ecstatic utterances that many scholars consider a precursor to what we now call speaking in tongues. It's really interesting because it shows how this type of spiritual expression has been a part of human experience for thousands of years. Now, we'll examine the most famous references to glossolalia in the Christian tradition. The New Testament provides us with two key passages that have shaped the understanding of speaking in tongues in Christianity. First, we have the dramatic event of Pentecost, described in Acts 2:1-13. The scene is set. The apostles are gathered together when suddenly, they're filled with the Holy Spirit and begin speaking in languages they've never learned. People from different nations could understand them in their own languages. Then, in 1 Corinthians 12:14, we see Paul discussing spiritual gifts, including the gift of tongues. He provides guidance on how this gift should be used in the church, showing that it was a significant part of early Christian worship. As we move into the early Christian era, we see glossolalia playing an important role in the developing church. One of the most significant movements that emphasized speaking in tongues was Montanism in the 2nd century. The Montanists believed that prophecy and speaking in tongues were clear evidence of the Holy Spirit's presence among believers. But not everyone in the early church viewed glossolalia the same way. Some church fathers, like Irenaeus and Tertullian, spoke positively about spiritual gifts, including tongues. Others, like Augustine, were more skeptical. This diversity of opinion shows us that even in its early days, the Christian church grappled with how to understand and practice speaking in tongues. As we enter the Middle Ages, we see a significant decline in the practice of glossolalia, at least in mainstream Western Christianity. It's possible that speaking in tongues continued in some Eastern rites or smaller, more mystical groups, but it largely fell out of practice in the Western Church. This shift reflects changing theological emphases and worship styles during this period. However, the story doesn't end there. With the coming of the Reformation and the movements that followed, we see occasional resurgences of interest in spiritual gifts, including glossolalia. For example, the Pietist movement in 17th and 18th century Germany sought a return to personal spirituality, and within this context, speaking in tongues occasionally resurfaced. Now we come to a pivotal moment in the history of glossolalia, the birth of the modern Pentecostal movement. This revival began with the Azusa Street Revival in Los Angeles in 1906. It's really fascinating because this event marked a significant resurgence of speaking in tongues in Christian practice. In the Pentecostal tradition that emerged from this revival, speaking in tongues took on a central role. It was seen as the initial physical evidence of the baptism of the Holy Spirit. This belief led to a widespread practice of glossolalia in Pentecostal churches, dramatically changing the landscape of Christian worship in many parts of the world. Building on the Pentecostal revival, the charismatic movement began in the 1960s and had a profound impact on Christian practice. What makes this movement so interesting is how it spread the practice of glossolalia into mainline Protestant, Catholic, and even some Orthodox churches. Unlike the Pentecostal movement, the charismatic movement didn't necessarily tie speaking in tongues to a specific theology of spirit baptism. This broader acceptance of glossolalia led to its practice in a wide variety of Christian contexts. It's fascinating to see how a practice that was once confined to a specific denomination became more widely accepted and practiced across different Christian traditions. Today, glossolalia continues to be practiced in various forms across different Christian denominations and even in some non-Christian contexts. In Pentecostal and charismatic churches, It's often seen as a spiritual gift for personal edification or for the edification of the church when accompanied by interpretation. Some evangelical groups practice it, though it's not universally accepted or emphasized. I find it particularly interesting how the interpretation and practice of glossolalia can vary so widely between different faith traditions. This spread of glossolalia has had a lasting impact on contemporary Christian worship and spirituality. Speaking in tongues has also caught the attention of scientists, particularly psychologists and linguists. These researchers have conducted studies to understand the nature of glossolalia. Is it a learned behavior, a dissociative state, or a form of emotional release? Most studies show that glossolalia doesn't conform to any known language structure. I think it's fascinating how science and spirituality intersect in the study of this phenomenon. As with many religious practices, glossolalia has been the subject of controversy and debate. Questions arise about its authenticity, with some viewing it as an emotional rather than spiritual phenomenon. There are also concerns about its potential for misuse or overemphasis in worship. These debates reflect the complex nature of glossolalia and its place in religious practice. I believe it's important to approach these controversies with an open mind and respect for different perspectives. As we've seen, the history of speaking in tongues is a fascinating journey through time, culture, and spirituality. From ancient oracles to modern-day churches, glossolalia has played a significant role in religious expression. Whether viewed as a divine gift, a psychological phenomenon, or something in between, it continues to captivate and inspire people around the world. I hope this exploration has given you a deeper understanding of the rich history of glossolalia and its ongoing significance in our world today.